Hi, my name is Anjali and welcome to Fem Stories. Today we have another trailblazer, and the focus of her journey is on a social impact. She's an executive director for an NGO called Voice for Girls. She's a founder director of a social change called Soch. It's like two letters from social and change called Soch. She's also actively working for this NGO and for this overall initiative as well. She's an Ashoka Fellow 2023, also Echidna Global Scholar 2023. And this whole NGO and this whole initiative that she's working is the striving to eliminate the gender inequality. So I welcome Anusha Bharadwaj in the studios today. We have the Zoom podcast schedule that I'm working with her, and I really want to figure out what are her three primary segments, what are the three primary areas that she focuses on for the Voice for Girls and the Soch. So let's stay tuned and hear more from Anusha. Thank you.
Don't hear them enough. And even when they speak, it's almost like, okay, I'm doing 10 other things and then speaking. I think the gender really plays a big role in this. So we really have to be pushed to share our stories. I come from a very typical South Indian background where education is a really important part of my family, but education for girls is for a suitable boy. And so, being the only girl amongst my cousins and my own brother, it was quite a lot of like competing with the boys to. And I
Hmm.
wanted to be better than the boys. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to do things that they do and do it better. So I think my benchmark was being like a boy. And I think maybe 2 decades into this competition, I realized that the competition is what the society is setting up girls to be, right? Like to say, okay, you're not good enough. So either girls sort of get into that stereotype and say, yeah, I think I have a separate role and I am a different person, or they get into this competition, which I did. And
Hmm.
I think after I finished my engineering, because somebody said, girls can't do engineering, I said, "मैं engineering करके दिखाऊंगी. I will do this." I
Sure.
realized my heart was not in it, and I really wanted to work in social impact. I used to volunteer, and once I finished the degree, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I want to move on to what and want to rediscover who I am because I had
Hmm.
lived a journey that didn't seem right to who I was.
So when did this
Because
happen? When did this
around
switch happen?
about 2023, 22, 23, when, I think I was, no, maybe 21. I finished my engineering.
Hmm.
I had my degree in hand, and then I said, I don't want to do science and I want to go to this organization and work where I'd already volunteered. And
Hmm.
that's how my transition happened into social impact. I joined a foundation that was working with children and young people. And and though my immediate family, my parents were really supportive, but they were still
Hmm.
in that larger family where,
Hmm.
girls have to be set up to marry. So
Certainly.
yeah, but my parents were rock solid to say, yeah, you can do what you want to do,
Amazing.
and so that's how I started myself in this social impact space. After working for a few years, I wanted to get a professional degree in the development profession. So I was considering social sciences, I was considering rural management, and finally I ended up doing a master's in rural management from the Institute of Rural Management, Anand, which is very
Yeah.
well known for
Yeah.
bringing development sector professionals and managers. And I think
Is
those
this
two
the one
years
in
were very
Bhubaneswar?
beautiful. It's in Anand, it's in Gujarat.
Gujarat.
Um, yeah, and the founder of IRMA was also founder of Amol and the whole Amol movement, milk cooperative movement.
Yes.
So there was a lot of that intent in the organization, in the founding of the institution. So I really, really enjoyed getting lost in not knowing. I felt that, you're very young and you're in the social impact and you're
Yeah.
like, yes, I can do this. But those
Hmm.
2 years were very humbling because there was so much that I had to learn in terms of, what is
Hmm.
development and how do you manage projects that are, because at
Hmm.
the end
Hmm.
of the day, it's a business, it's social business, but it's still a business that most of us, in the space have to run. I mean, it'll have resources, it'll have deliverables and tasks and measurements. And in a way, it's just like business.
Hmm.
Maybe you're dealing with
Hmm.
social issues. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that understanding was very strong, including my own science degree, to say, okay, when and if I work in these projects, it's going to be very scientific in the way we develop, in the way we measure, in the way we report. So
Hmm.
evidence is a very strong aspect of how we build. But I think as I went along in the journey, I worked with children and child rights and education and health.
Hmm.
And I kept it for a long time, not gender, because I felt, given my own personal experiences, I felt like if I work on gender, it'll get too
Yeah.
personal and a lot of my childhood will resurface. But I was,
Hmm.
I think, very wrong, because every time I walked into the field and I started working with children, I just naturally gravitated to working with girls, because I was like, I saw the energy and they just
Yeah.
needed one platform, and then they would transform themselves, they bring other girls in the journey, and I felt so inspired. And I think Voice for Girls was a culmination of all these moments of inspiration for me all through the journey. So yeah, that's Voice for Girls. Voice works with adolescent girls, because
Hmm.
that age is super critical. I mean, there's so much physically and emotionally happening in the girl's life, and I think it's critical no
Hmm.
matter which part of the world she is. But
Sure.
if she comes from a certain background, I mean, that age can be so defining. I mean, the transition from childhood to womanhood can literally happen over a period.
Yeah.
And then she would most likely drop out of school, get married before legally she should, have children before her body is ready and her mind is ready. So really capturing that age for marginalized
Hmm.
adolescent girls was really important for me, and I think that sort of became the mission and vision of Voice for Girls.
That's awesome. This is really very unique concept and very targeting the right age, because that is when exactly their mind is shifting, their overall perspective is shifting. I mean, I have a 9-year-old and I can understand how, it's called a preteen these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have a
I have an
mind of
8-year-old, so I can understand.
they have a mind of their own already, and they don't understand the world, but they think in
Yeah.
their head they do. So
Yeah.
how do you marry those two thoughts is amazing, and you deal with these girls. That's
Mhm.
really amazing. I would love to dig deeper in this, Anusha. I would love to understand in terms of, if you can just quantify three things, in terms of where the three areas that you target to
Mhm.
work with these girls, and the
Mhm.
takeaways. What is the impact you eventually get out of those three areas?
Mhm. Mhm. This is a great question. And I like that you're scientific in these questions, Anjali. I
Sure.
guess three areas is, I think for boys is pretty simple, right? Like we
I'm
believe that
taking the notes
adolescent
as well
girls,
because this is very close to my heart. So
definitely, Anjali,
taking the
go for
notes.
it. So we believe that at that age there's so much happening, right? Like
Yes,
because of this transition.
totally.
So we believe in giving her all the information that she'll need in that state. So we call it the critical knowledge, and critical knowledge consists of health. And when I
Mm-hmm.
say health, we're talking about sexual reproductive health, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about gender, sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Then it is around, rights. Like she has rights at home, she has rights at, the workplace, she has rights in school. So what are her rights and what she can access, which is legally, recognized in India. So health, rights, safety from violence. Again, especially in the current context we live in, helping children, especially girls, understand how to recognize violence, how to prevent violence, how to report violence. So that's a huge area that we focus on. And also future planning, because I mean, even from a lot of evidence that we've collected, 80% of girls, Anjali, it's very heartening to see that they want to pursue higher education and careers, but only 25 to 30% know how to do that. So how can we ensure that she's having a long-term vision for her future, which she wants to? It's not like, okay,
Hmm.
my father thinks I should do this, or my mother wants to, or I see, this girl in my community who's a nurse. Like, really, what do you want to do? And if this is the path that you want to take, what are the steps that you have to do as you go along the journey? So health, safety, future rights, and planning is the areas that we color, we sort of look at in terms of critical knowledge.
Hmm.
And the one that ties all of this together is self-awareness, because
Yeah.
again, life skills is a huge important aspect. Like I can know all of this knowledge, but I can't make it actionable unless I have those life skills of negotiation, of decision making, and critical thinking. All those
Hmm.
life skills that can take this knowledge and make it actionable, because I need to contextualize it to my own community and the problems I'm facing and the solutions that exist around me. So this requires self-awareness, but at the same time, I feel all of this is the third aspect is just making her future ready, especially with girls and women. And I think this is again irrespective of the caste and class or
Yeah.
religion. We believe that we should help girls plan for like few years. Like, finish your 10th, then you can do, you
Hmm.
finish your degree, then you get married. Once you get married, then have one child, then have one
Hmm.
another. So it's always 2, 3 years that we have the girls and women plan, right? Like, how can
Yeah.
we make her future ready where she has an agency to make decisions for herself and dream of the future for herself.
Yeah.
And while there are families, and there are many families now who are supporting girls to do this vision, but really what is her vision is also limited by what others are saying, right? Like, yes, I want to
Hmm.
study, and I want to do this, but maybe I shouldn't become like I know many girls who've cracked the MBBS and could probably take any stream they want, but they're like,
Yeah.
because I will have to manage family, maybe I become an ex sort of a doctor, maybe I can't be a surgeon because I can't have. So how does she unshackle herself from this to want to have a say for herself? I think we
Yeah.
need to have girls break out of these stereotypes, and yeah.
No, that's wonderful. And while you were talking, I was actually thinking that India is inherently in a patriarchal society, right? Like you mentioned a couple of times that the girls are being they're raised to set in a certain way to marry, just to be ready for marriage. But
Mm,
don't you think last 3 4 years the slight change is coming? I mean, you might be the testament to this change if there is a change coming. I don't know. I mean, I've not lived here for that long. I was out of
mm,
country for 16 years. I recently stationed back,
mm,
but I feel there is a shift coming. I'm speaking to so many women entrepreneurs. They're all leading their businesses.
mm,
I'm sure they're also being raised, but they're not being raised to marry. They're leading and they're opening their own businesses. They're actually very very numbers driven, goal driven. So when you are working with the next millennials or next generation, what is your observation in terms of how close are they to this patriarchal mindset, or is it really opening up in terms of how they want to grow up, they want to become, and what kind of identity they want to associate with?
mm. I'm sorry. I wish I can be a little bit more hopeful. And I guess having worked here for many years, uh, I, me and other people working in the space can't do it without hope and optimism, right? But I
Hmm.
think every time we feel we've made strides forward, we have pulled back even more.
Wow.
So if you had asked me this before 2020, I was like, yes, there's so much change. And even as we were coming into 2020, some figures were starting to be very alarming, right? For instance, that many more girls are now getting educated,
Hmm.
but the female employment rate is actually dipping. So there's a huge story that's becoming very invisible, right? Like, yes, women are getting an education. So again,
Hmm.
education is to get the suitable boy, and the families are feeling that if you married well into this family, so why don't you just support the family while the man. So all of this education is not contributing to the economy because we don't care, work is not recognized as paid work. So really, there is a dip in that, right?
Hmm.
At the same time, pandemic happened, and I
Hmm.
felt all of us who said, we have a great foundation. The foundation came crashing across the world. The number of gender-based violence against women cases were just going over the roof. So when people said, you be safe at home, homes went safe for the girls and women, and that
Yeah.
was again a telling story that, okay, what's happening?
Hmm.
Why is this happening? And I think post pandemic, many things have shifted.
Hmm.
We still are struggling to see girls who have come back. We saw a huge number of increase in child brides during that time. We are yet to see how they surface, and most studies says that I think it's up to 70% that if she doesn't finish her 10th grade and she gets married, 75% of them will never get literate again. So they're just going to drop off the radar. So I want to be more hopeful to say things are changing. And I think we can't drop our efforts at all. In fact, we have to
Yeah.
amplify, and we must push the needle on a lot of things, including
Hmm.
safety for women, right? Like just this whole shocking, horrific case which came to limelight is just one of those visible things, but
It's just
actually
one
so
of
much
those
can change.
cases. Yes, it is
Yeah, but
happening
there's
on
so
the
many.
underlying ground. Yes, yes.
Exactly. But also then what is the story that others are going to take away from it, right? Like we're telling girls and it's really it's breaking my heart that I'm going to go into classrooms and tell girls, you can do anything you want, you can become a doctor, you can be an engineer and everything. But is
But
it
in
going to be a safe
reality,
space? The reality
yes.
is showing otherwise. And unfortunately, education for girls will alone not change this. We have to educate our
Yes,
boys, we have to have
yes.
stringent judiciary and police force that can help this. And I think the law has to tighten that this cannot
Absolutely.
be, so
I
easily.
mean, when I heard about this the doctor case in
Yeah,
Kolkata, I was like, I was shattered at the same time, but at the same time, within next 10 seconds, I was like, this is another Nirbhaya case. So
yeah,
what did we learn? In fact, worse than that, because this girl is educated. She's a doctor. She's a damn doctor. So basically, there's a team conceited effort against her. It can't be just
yeah,
one person, a driver, or because she was in Munirka bus stop and she was picked up in a bus. I'm talking about Nirbhaya, and then the
yeah,
bus and the conductor did the heinous crime, whatever they did there. But what was the difference? Cut to this case. What did we
yeah,
learn as a society and as a country in terms of the laws amendments, in terms of the safety? And there's a whole scandals and scams coming out of the medical institution. The doctors are involved. I mean, the blame and scapegoats can be the peons and the other people, but eventually there are bigger people who are behind this. So
yeah,
I mean, in
yeah.
the grand scheme of things, Anusha, do you think, I mean, it excites me, this topic, and this also brings me to my chills that what the effort that you are doing in the society, somehow it limits it hits the wall.
Yeah,
After so much
yeah,
effort, you can prepare them for
yeah.
years, you can prepare them to be educated, to raise their voice, but it hits the wall at some point just by the virtue of being in this country. What do you think?
A lot of things you said made, is things that we really need to start hearing and acting on. Like, yes, it's not just this, and maybe her body was used for violence, but it's not. But in the general society, the way we look at women, the way we believe in her, the way we respect her, all of these are questions that we have to ask. And this is irrespective of the gender itself. Like thinking
Yeah.
that women will be more respectful towards women or women will support other women. I feel that's a question that many of us have asked, and it's not true because women are as much a product of the patriarchal society as men. So just thinking
Yeah.
that because and the classic cases at homes, right? Like that the mother-in-law is the most difficult person that the daughter-in-law has to face, because I mean she's faced, the mother-in-law's faced so much from her own mother-in-law, and you would say, well, she should be different from it, but in a way she's carrying those traditions of patriarchy within her for her daughter-in-law. and
Yeah.
uh, and how do we see that shift to say women can support other women, and by that support we are only stronger together? That's one message. But at the same time, how do we educate the boys and men, because they aren't being trained? The education system
No.
is not educating us for life.
Yeah.
And the
I mean,
access
education
to.
doesn't mean reading sciences and maths and social studies and curriculum. Educating
Yeah,
means starts from home. We need to
exactly.
educate the equality in the home,
Yeah,
in our
yeah,
houses, our sons, our
yes,
cousins. The gender equality needs to start from
yeah,
home, and I
yeah,
think the son needs to be taught more than the daughters, because I think this is where the culture harbingers at the home, and it goes out in the society when
absolutely.
they grow up.
Yeah,
It's really
and I
essential.
do recognize that we can't probably hit every home, but then most children are in schools, and the right to education says they have to be in schools. So can we
Yeah.
educate our boys and men through these forums, and can we be a little bit more strict about posh and really implement it, not just have it as okay, there are these rules for preventing sexual harassment in workplaces, and just have a committee and let's forget about it. Like let's have these difficult conversation of what is a safe workplace for women, even if
Yeah.
it means that we are saying, well, if there is a table of 10 men and one woman, then the
Yeah.
men have to work really hard to make that woman feel comfortable, make the woman feel heard and respected in that space. So these are conversations that we definitely need to have. And in whether it was Nirbhaya or this case at Kolkata or any other case, the change will not happen until men can be educated on that.
and,
Absolutely, this is not
and
okay.
held accountable for, and held
Held
accountable for.
accountable
They
for
need
that.
to be held
Absolutely.
accountable.
And yes, and as educated people, why don't we do it in our own homes is a question we must ask, right? I think
Yeah,
domestic violence against women in middle class homes is quite high, but it's not
it's
spoken
quite
about because we go along with saying,
because they
ये
don't
तो
speak
हमारा
up.
culture नहीं है. This is not a culture that things that happen within four walls should go out. How do we make it not okay, right? Like it's, violence against women is not okay. It doesn't matter where it is. So how do we change it from, I mean, our own homes, our friends, and if there is a sexist comment and everybody's laughing about it and say, okay, I mean, even if it is a man standing to say, well, I don't want to be part of the circle because I don't appreciate you talking
Yeah,
about women like this.
just say no.
We
Yeah,
need, yeah, we need men to not have locker room conversations, right? How does it come out in the open? And we should be okay when a man says, I don't want to be part of this. ये सिर्फ मजाक है, this is just a joke, is the joke that we're living with, and it's affecting all of us.
true. Absolutely. No, I think it's a very insightful discussion, but I want to digress a little bit to Voice for Girls and also your another venture, which is social change. You call it
Search for social
SOCH.
change.
Is this
Search
same
for social
as
change.
Voice for Girls, or is it the similar initiative? Tell us more about it.
So Voice for Girls started with like, let's make adolescent and transitions from, childhood to adulthood, a safe journey for girls. And
Yeah,
then along the journey, we said, no, we want to work with boys as well. So we work with adolescent population. And the way
yeah,
we do this, Anjali, which I think is innovative, is that we have worked with more than 7,000 young college students who come on social internship journeys with us. So we approach colleges, and these young men and women are studying these colleges. We do a placement talk. We tell them about the social internship, and they sign up to do this during their vacations. And then we train them, and there's a
mm,
whole process of interviewing, selecting, training, and then we place these young students in schools to do the program. And through this journey of pairing young men and women in the classroom with boys and girls has been a very beautiful journey because one, this person is not in the system, is not really like he or she is just a young adult, right? So they're not really set in the ways of, girls have to do this and boys have to do this. They're just going through the age themselves. They aren't having safe spaces to have this conversation. So these young
mm,
men and women, we call them camp counselors, they are our biggest force. They
mm,
are creating gender transformative safe spaces for our adolescent boys and girls in these schools. They are role
mhm,
models for them. And at the same time, we've noticed that through this journey that they want to contribute more to social impact. We know some of them have
mhm.
joined the sector. They've done higher studies in social impact. They've started their own organizations. So Soch for Social Change was with this audience in mind, that young people are a great force for the social impact sector, and in that women especially want to get onto this intentionally as a career path. So how do we support them in this journey is what Search for Social Change is. We do a whole lot of leadership programs for young women to enter the social impact space or find their passion and purpose, and sort of also have them create an action plan. So we run leadership
Yeah,
programs and journeys for them. So
you
Soch is
do.
more
Okay.
in how do we have more women contribute back to the social impact space. So it's more ecosystem building work that we do
Hmm.
with Soch for Social Change. But our true inspiration came from their work with Voice for Girls. But to just
Voice for
have
Girls.
complete clarity of mission and purpose, I said, okay, let's found it as another organization. But I would say, if you ask me, what does Anusha do? Anusha works with, the population from 10 years up to 25 to 30, like, right? Like, so I'm passionate about working with girls and women, and I think
Yes.
this coach or boys is are just names to this passion.
Yeah. No, I love the name. It's Soch, and it's a social change. It's like the
Yeah.
first two letters. It's actually very beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that. I was wondering in terms of when you interact with these girls and women,
Mhm.
uh, what is the most challenging thing? Like, tell me about your one most biggest challenge? I mean, you've already spoken about in terms of breaking the barriers. You
Mm,
talked about in terms of hitting the wall in the government,
mm,
but there is so much you can do, and you can do what you can do. But in terms of interacting with the girls, now let's just
mm,
shift the focus and on the audience that you did interact with. What is the most challenging thing that you've dealt with, and
mm.
how did you like? What was the discovery?
I think the most challenging thing is that we are, girls and women have limitations in how much they can dream, and really to shake them up and say you can dream bigger, right? And this again, I think
Segment.
is
What is the segment you target? Maybe it's not. What is the segment in India? Because India is very segmented.
I would say this is a phenomena for girls and women across again caste class lines, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
that only now we are hearing women sort of dream big and whatever. Otherwise, even the best of people I've met in the sector who are women are like, yeah, we are there, we're doing this. In fact, very recently, I was in this forum where we were talking to, there's organizations working around life skills and what to do. And there's this woman who does absolutely brilliant work. She's a social entrepreneur, leads work around life skills with adolescents, and she's worked many years in the corporate, and the way she introduced herself is like, I don't know, I'm still figuring it out. And but everybody else in the room hears the wisdom, hears the amazing work that she does, and has been recognized for. But there's just this whole it's deeply gender, and I know men who would have done equally what she's done or even lesser would have stories to tell about their valor and how brilliantly they've changed lives. So I'm equally a case study for that, right? Like I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, but I think I've just stumbled upon this, and I know when I can look back and use my left brain and say, no, there is a method to the madness. But if you ask me, most times I'm like, we're just getting from one day to the other, and that's all I know.
Yeah.
So I think with girls and women, we just have to be a little bit more brave to embrace big dreams
Mm.
and bring other people along in the journey. I think we put our own filters to how much we can. I mean, I shudder to think that, if you ask me what do you want to do with voice, what's your deep plan, I would say really I want to create this whole center for excellence, a safe space for girls and young people. Anybody who wants to work with just adolescent girls and young people, this is where you have to go. But it's taken me 5 years in, like, starting to talk about it. I'm like, this is
Mhm.
mad. Like, Anusha, you don't have the capacities, you don't know how to do it. And I had to really work with myself and work with coaches to say, okay, yes, this is not mad, I will have to do it. So I think that's
Mm.
the biggest challenge for us, that we aren't trained to dream big.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
we do small, and which is good, which is a great skill that women have. But just
Yeah.
sometimes we just have to be, audacious. Just,
Yeah.
you know,
Just go free spirited. You really need to take
exactly.
decisions, taking risk, and just go beyond. No, excellent.
Absolutely. And you're such a brilliant inspiration for this, right? Like, who would have thought, your whole life in America, and you're coming here and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this podcast and this company. So it
Yeah.
requires some audacity to shake
Yeah.
oneself up.
My reason to move to India is different, but it is more from the family perspective. But my kids are thriving here. They're loving the overall change in the culture, and there's the emotional
How old are
connect.
your kids?
So 5.5 and 9.5. So very
Uh,
young, very very beautiful age. I really enjoy their transition, their conversation with me, and their schools in Los Altos, California versus now in Gurugram. The whole change is very, and of course, I mean
mm,
Gurugram, like the RBI governor said, right? Gurugram is the kind of a first world in India. Sort of
that's true.
it is pretty much the similar stature. So we live in expat community, so there is not much change. It's like a transition was very smooth. But if you look at the rest of the India, it's like, what did he say? I think it was very interesting. His words were that rest of the India is like a rural below the poverty line, but people
Mm,
like Bangalore, Mumbai, and Gurgaon, they're like first world and
mm,
the third world country. So
yeah.
it's interesting for me, and while there's a reason why I'm here, and what I make use of this time while I'm here, creating my own company, then generating this voice using this podcast. And I'm doing a
Mm,
couple of other stuff as well. That's just my personality to do things that I can do with my own time. But coming back to the topic that you were mentioning in terms of, so I just want to use one word that is called marriage.
Mm-hmm.
How I feel in this generation, in our generation, and even for the next generation that's coming up, marriage is an institution that is shrinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? As opposed to our grandparents, as opposed to our parents, where there were longer marriages, where they were
Mm-hmm.
longer, more, I don't know if I can say men were more loyal, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel the tolerance level, maybe our grandmothers were good at taking slaps every second day. Maybe our moms were good at, cooking and
Mm-hmm.
giving themselves to the family, to the kids without thinking about themselves. Maybe they were
Mm-hmm.
not as career oriented. Maybe they were not financially independent. I mean, there were lots of women who were doing this, but not as many women as we have today, from every segment of the society in the country like India. So maybe that is one of the reasons. But then, even with that, I feel if the women is getting educated, if the women is getting financially independent, then the marriage rate should be better. There is a better partnership that comes together. There is a better understanding because at the same time, the man is also getting educated. I mean, in the same education, same schools. So, why do you think what is going wrong?
I think I would disagree that it's going on. I think it's finally going right.
Okay.
We're still a country where 1 out of 5 girls gets married before she's 18. So I think we are also sending maximum child brides to be married before they should even be, thinking about it. So we aren't
Hmm.
actually at that stage where I would say that fertility rates are shrinking or whatever.
Yeah.
And I do think that marriages, I don't advocate that marriages don't last. Okay, that's absolutely not what I'm saying. But this whole like let's tolerate violence and abuse in this marriage,
Yeah.
and women have a certain role. For many years, women have just been silent about it, and societies have supported it. I'm glad
Yeah.
that those cases are being reported, and I'm
Yes.
glad that marriages that will sustain should be because there's partnership and equality, not because it's just what keep it within the four walls and tolerate what happens, right? Like and this whole like till the first night, don't talk to boys at all. You can't be in their presence, you can't hang out, you can't date, you can't do whatever. But now you're married, this is the first night, you go into the room and the man can do whatever he wants. This is
Yeah.
still the story for many women in this country. And
Mm.
these things have to change. And maybe
Yeah.
the change is happening because now girls know their rights and will demand for a non-abusive respectful marriage. And so I do not advocate that marriages don't last, but it should last for the right reasons.
Right
And I don't
reasons.
yeah, and I don't still think there is evidence to say that women being educated is enough, or men being educated enough is enough for these kind of respectful marriages to come through. We are still living
Yeah.
in a very very patriarchal community
Very.
where these
Long way
are
to go, I guess.
long way to go. And again, like the education system itself is not preparing
Yeah.
young adults to be citizens or gender sensitive, right? So we really need to fix that as
Yeah.
much as blaming. And I know that in many forums that I go to, like, yeah, nowadays girls have a voice and hence they're walking out of marriages. Well, if they walked out of the marriage because of those reasons that are not equal and are abusive, then it's good that she has a right and she will be the role model for other girls to not tolerate violence or
Yeah.
not tolerate abuse or not tolerate not being equal in the
Toxic
wedding,
behavior.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're still a country where dowry, though it's illegal, is and is just a very common practice. We're still
Yeah.
a country which 1 out of 5 girls will get married before we're 18. So it's a long journey for us to ever get to this point of
Wow.
marriage as an
Then after talking
institution
to you,
is
I have a
being
different
threatened.
picture of the society now. I,
Yeah.
I had a different picture so far, but now after talking to you, it has recreated a world in front of me, which is not what I thought it is. I mean, we still are not. I mean, I don't know. Do you work with schools and colleges as well, or you just work with these girls? Like in terms
We
of
work
education
with
changes?
girls. we work with these girls in the schools and in colleges. So we are deep into the system that, in fact, the bureaucrats who work with us actually want us to talk to girls about a lot of these issues, and support our programs. So yeah, we talk to them in these institutions, and in a way, I think that that's a inroad into really questioning the systems from within. And very gratefully, at least in south of India where we work, there's
Mm.
a lot of systems level changes that we can start to see, right? Like,
Awesome.
really having, especially in Telangana, many institutions that support girls in the journey, have hostels, residential schools, and colleges. So we can see that the governments and systems are changing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is still not mandated to have gender transformative safe spaces and curriculum. And it is still like efforts that are happening in isolation by organizations like me and others. Like somebody is
Yeah.
going in and talking about, say, gender and science and STEM.
Mm.
Somebody is going in and saying, oh, let's work with girls on preventing violence or menstrual health and hygiene. I feel that there's so much that we need to back, that it needs to be much more holistic, much more long term, because obviously by just telling girls all this information, saying, okay, now I'm finished with my workshop, I'm going, but for them to be able to make it a life education takes a while.
Mm.
So really, I think the next effort for Voice for Girls is to, how do we see systems level change? How do we see this as a collaborative effort? How can we inspire other organizations to pick up pieces of the way we do this? How can
Yeah.
we become this learning? Like also that there are so many things that are happening in isolation. Can we be the hub for this learning, that
Yeah.
people can come and share, and we can become a resource hub for people who want to work with adolescents and work with young people on future readiness, feminist leadership,
Yeah.
sexual reproductive health, all of those. So I think the journey ahead is to become a systems player, become find more people to share the vision, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't think we can be isolated.
Absolutely. So, so we learned a lot today. We learned about social change search. We learned about Voice for Girls. We learned about your approach in terms of working with these girls and overall, and how patriarchal society is, and in terms of how things can change. I would love to get into another episode in terms of a futuristic thinking, in terms of how, what is your next 5 year vision or a plan,
Mm.
in terms of, because clearly we are still talking the same thing, we're still talking the
Mm.
same shit in terms of, getting people getting dowry and the
Yeah.
girls getting married under 18. It is still happening, like you mentioned. I'm sure the statistics, you have the numbers too.
So we worked with more than quarter of million adolescents, and then we worked with more than 6,000. I think the number that I shared with you is also quite outdated. Yeah. So as an organization, we believe that, let's put our last decade plus has been, and now we're 12 years, 13 years, and next year will be 13
Hmm.
years, has been in let's keep our head on the ground. Let's just go deep in. So 98% of Voices work is in rural, tribal areas, difficult to reach
Yeah,
populations,
I figured. Yeah.
has really when we say marginalized adolescent girls, I can tell you with evidence that we worked with marginalized adolescent girls, because these are really vulnerable groups that we work with in deep interior places.
Hmm.
But I guess the last decade plus of this has been in collecting these stories and evidence and really sharpening our ways of working with adolescents, because they're a very unique group. They have very unique challenges, creating adolescent friendly curriculum, creating adolescent friendly processes, and really becoming a place where we have defined what is a gender transformating safe space within schools and communities. How do we create that? I think Voice has been uh, you know, uh, a very, very, let's put our head on the ground and figure this out and really become experts in that field. But I guess the next decade for Voice will be in sharing these successes,
Hmm.
and recognizing that, we aren't in a world where we can sequence things. First, let's work with girls and then let's work with women. And we can't sequence because
No,
it's
you
just
can't do
so
that.
population wise, we are really huge. Complexity wise, it's huge. So we have to target this from many areas. It's very complex, but at the same time, it is also pertinent that people like us don't be stuck in a service delivery alone mode. Like, yes, we
Yeah.
can now then take it to 10 states, and then we can take it to, more millions of girls ourselves. But how do we become and find a way to distribute this ability to solve, right? Like, so I think the next decade for voice will be in taking all these deep learnings and expertise in working. We've created games to talk about this issue. We've created great curriculum in a way that you don't require an expert to come and tell you this is life education and anybody who's
Hmm.
gone through. So we work with young men and women who agnostic of what degree
Hmm.
they have, they can actually take the curriculum which we can, train them on, and then they can deliver this curriculum. And it's very measurable because we are tracking the change in attitudes and knowledge and
You
perception in these
are.
girls.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think we've come to a point where we want to become a system player. We want to find more people who will come on this journey with us, become a center of excellence, become a hub, a resource hub for anybody who wants to work on adolescence. Because we've also been a very intentional organization that has kept our vision and vision to adolescent only. So I think we've
Mhm.
accrued that evidence to be able to share, but we also want to be a learner,
Yeah.
constantly learner. So we want to continue to have some direct implementation because that's where the maximum learning happens. We have our ears on the ground, but at the same time become a resource hub for other organizations and governments that want to learn how to be adolescent friendly or help them in that journey of making this transition from childhood to womanhood a smooth journey for girls.
Yeah. No, it's a very key topic. And so clearly, three things I heard is becoming a system player,
Mhm.
working with a bigger organization and governments to nurture and shape this overall space because it's much needed considering the situation we are in the
Mm.
country. And third is to be directional, more in terms of ground your strategies to ensure that you're working in a right direction. So that's great. I mean, that's a great vision in terms of next 5 years. And so besides doing voice for girls and so what does Anusha do? Let's talk about you
Yes.
now. What do you do for fun? What do
You're
you do?
a No, you're a mother of two kids, right? Being an entrepreneur and a mother is like doing four jobs at a time. So I
Oh
have
God.
two
You know.
children.
Yes.
I have a son who's 8 year old and a daughter who's
Yes.
4. So a
Nice.
lot of what
Like
Anusha
same.
doesn't do at work, yeah, it's very similar. So you know that there's no time. Like, and I think in
Right.
a way having kids is like you don't think too much into like so much future. Today, did we eat? Did we study? Did
Yes,
we get to school? Did we go through? Okay,
exactly.
I think that's
Every
which I
day as
think
it
is
comes.
really, yeah, I think it's very beautiful because it doesn't allow for like fears.
Yes.
And not like you don't have it, but you don't have time and space to, deal
Yeah.
with all of that. It's just like
Process
going
that.
from one day to the other. But I
Exactly.
think through them, I'm really rediscovering childhood, lots of art and craft happening at home, or reading books and knowing facts. Like my son just shared some fact with me today. I'm like, I know this is not going to be relevant for anything I do in life, but it's really great to know that this fish has two sets of teeth. Like, that's great. So
Yes.
how do you like, live these small moments of pleasure? So Anusha just enjoying being a mother outside of
Nice.
this, but because life is so packed, really valuing the me time and really not dropping the ball on reading. And that's when your question of what are the books that you read, I'm like, nah, I have something to share. And this year has been really beautiful in like keeping on that journey of reading. And
Yes.
so I
I will
think
come to
that
that.
me
We'll have a
time
fun rapid
is,
fire at the end.
yeah. No, but also that having that you, because life is so busy and you can't drop the ball in so on so many ends, you're really valuing that me time, and that me time is very special. And I
It
love to
is.
cook, so also finding ways to, and for me cooking is so de-stressing. So for me, finding those
Cooking.
ways to de-stress and enjoy simple
Nice.
small things, small escapades in the day.
Nice. Do you meditate at all? Like, do you meditate? Do you have time for your connecting with yourself, inner self, or is it more like religious? How do you
I
communicate
don't
with God?
really, I've not been able to sort of become very good at that. I mean, yeah, physically being fit is a really important thing. So I do have times where I drop off the ball, but at least 4 days a week, I need to get some exercise. I'm very good with my diet most times. So for me, those are really small ways. Meditation, I've not been able to. But for me, cooking is very meditative because at that time I can't think of work. I don't think of anything. It's just like, what am I doing in the kitchen? So in a way,
The
it's really
present.
completely has me cut off from from those difficult things that you have to deal with the day. But also reading for me is very
Mm,
meditate helps me lose myself in a new world and a new space.
makes
And
sense.
if and I know when I'm not reading for a while that I start feeling very, yeah, I feel very like
Disconnected.
I don't, yeah, I feel disconnected because I can't disconnect into that new world.
Exactly. You have to disconnect to connect.
I know,
It's a
I
very
know.
important brain function that you have to manage pretty consistently. Amazing,
Yes,
beautiful. What is
yes.
your connection? What is your relationship with the God?
I have a very, very difficult relationship with God. I am cultural more than religious. I do believe
Okay.
that I celebrate like equal fervor. I would celebrate Christmas to Diwali. For me, it's
Yeah,
very cultural that it brings
that's a good
families
thing.
together. And but a lot of what we follow as religion today is very dogmatic, very ritualistic, and there's so much in terms of, because I think it's human made, right, and man made mostly. The traditions that you have to follow, I feel, is very unfair for women. Like, yeah, culturally you do this and you have to
Yeah.
dress a certain way and you have to do all of this, but at the end of the day, I think we get lost in the rituals and we lose the
Yeah.
meaning. Like,
So what I
the
meant
meaning
to
is
ask is,
lost.
I mean, we are celebrating festivals where we are dressing up, we are doing all the ritual that we have seen, we have, grown into those households. That is more in terms of being, culturally rich country or being raised in a culturally rich
Mm.
country in India. What I meant to ask in terms of what your relationship with God is when you go to temples, when you're actually in those difficult moments, what do you talk to God? What is your relationship with Him? Do you ask something when you go to the temple? That is what I meant to ask, as opposed to the cultural and ritual aspect that we all
So I
enjoy.
don't really go to temples much. So again, like I think my whole uh, to sort of like discover who I was, I had to get away from the ritual aspect of religion, and all I knew was the ritual aspect of religion. But truly, my family is not very religious in that sense. It's around celebrating these festivals, but not like we do puja every
Spiritual
day.
part of it.
Yeah, so I think it was more in do good actions, and through good actions you have good karma. It's more
Mm.
the introduction to religion was through my grandfather, who brought it from a very mythological angle. And there are these stories, and these stories are all, or including my grandmother, who's I would say the most liberal woman I ever know. So she's like,
Mm.
don't follow anything just because you want to, but these are all stories that have life lessons for you. So
Yeah.
listen to it as a story and see where it goes. So I've been
Mm.
very fortunate to be in a family that has looked at religion as stories, religion as culture. So
Yeah.
my conversations with God doesn't really happen as conversations with God. It's about these lessons that these texts are giving me. For instance, there was one particular time where I was very, very like there was something that was really sitting on my mind and I wasn't able to work through it.
I was
And
about to ask you, like, how do you process those difficult
yeah,
days and challenges of life when it goes
yeah,
on you? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? What is your internalizing? Because the job you do is not easy. It's not a corporate job. You are a social entrepreneur. You're actually doing the social
yeah.
job, and it's not easy to, deal with those adolescent girls and
Hmm.
people who are dealing with so much hardships. So I'm sure Anusha has one of those days in a month. What do you do
Yeah.
then?
I am very, very fortunate that I have a partner who respects my work, understands, who's the one who's behind me when I doubt myself. And he's the one who says, no, actually you have, even yesterday when we were having a conversation, I was very confused. He's like, you did this strategy for the organization, so many years ago, DK. You're much wiser today. So don't worry. I know you're getting into this next phase of what is the strategy for the organization, but actually you've got this and you've got more. So I think a rock solid partner who's even the days that I am deeply doubting myself is the one who's saying, no, you have it in you. And
That's amazing.
does the difficult conversation with me to say, you're actually doing too much. Maybe you need to pause. And this whole year has been a lot of intentional pause, because otherwise I would just be like, okay, I need to have this
Keep going.
engagement and I need to go to this meeting. Just pause to say, I've done a lot, and this is the time where I pause and do some things very intentional.
Sure.
And I'm very grateful again for my mom and dad, and my mom especially, who, when she retired, I was like, I am running an organization. I'm gonna have another child. Now I have two kids at home. Why don't you? And for the since 2020, she's the center of the household. It's an intergenerational family. My
Yeah.
parents live with me. My mother-in-law, though she lives in Coimbatore, she comes and goes very often. my
Mm.
my grandmother lives with me. She's 95. And
Mhm.
so I think having a family that's just supporting each other, and it's not easy. I'm not saying that intergenerational families are easy, but just
Yeah.
having that, I'm very grateful that we're all learning ways to be with each other. So I joke that 9 decades live in the family, like my 95-year-old and my 4-year-old are best friends.
How
So
beautiful is
really,
it?
yeah, so
So
really, like,
basically, you're connecting with God is basically you connect with your family, your husband,
yes.
your partner, your kids. That is your connect to
Also,
God.
very, very amazing individuals who are, friends who, and really like sector professionals who are inspiring me. When I
Yeah.
have a really, like, bad day at work and I'm like questioning everything I do, I have a mentor who would be like on the phone call with me, or my board members who are also friends, who deeply, support and guide me, who have my back. Like, yes, maybe this was a mistake, doesn't matter, we'll pick ourselves up and go forward.
Yeah.
So I think just being very, very intentional about the purpose of the organization, and the
Yeah.
passion of the organization, I've just found more people who are passionate about the cause. So Voice for Girls is not Anusha anymore. It's just all of these people who believe in the
Beautiful.
vision, who believe that their stories come alive through voice. And I also believe that. Like, I found my voice because of Voice for Girls.
Yeah.
So find their own voice and find ways to appreciate the diversity, right? Like within the organization, also, I've worked with people who worked with me for 6 years, 10 years now.
Yeah.
And each year we are so different from each other, and yet we are together, right? Like, so I think Anusha is this beautiful journeys that I've connected with people, whether they're friends or family. And
Beautiful.
as I grow older, I think I'm getting very intentional that, if time is a critical resource, then how do we share the time, and who do we share the time with, and
Yeah.
what do we learn? So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it was great to know Anusha briefly, and it was great to learn more about Voice for Girls, Soch, and overall your thought process in terms of what the societal issues are. Let's shift gears towards what advice you can give to the budding entrepreneurs, the women entrepreneurs, in terms of based on your journey, right? In terms of, so I'm sure we all learn through the different resources. We have, we go to different events that somehow shifts and change and shapes our lives. So what were the resources, any programs, any, groups you're part of that you would like to share that, people sitting, listening to you can, get
Mm.
inspired, even if five women get inspired that, hey, Anusha has learned this from this, let's just go and click on this. So I think even five women does this after watching this episode, the objective is done. So I would love to understand your microcosm of knowledge.
That's really nice way to ask the question.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
If there are three things I want to tell young women, right? Like,
Sure.
one is to say that, life and passion and purpose flow together. There's no linearity. That you
True.
can't sequence one for the other, right? Like, let me have kids and then have a career. Let me have a career, then have kids. And when is the right time? And I think with young people, this question is becoming even more pertinent. And I would want to tell them that life and passion and everything will just evolve side by side.
Yes, you
And
can't wait
and
for it's not a what is it called?
it's
Block processing, batch processing, one after the
exactly,
other. It doesn't work like
yeah.
that. You have
Yeah,
to
it
put
doesn't
it
work like that.
together.
It all happens parallelly, and sometimes you have to be patient to say, why, and it'll emerge. So that's one. Second is, I would say, always find ways to upskill and find a community. Especially if you're a woman entrepreneur, the journey is very isolating. You're questioning yourself, you're not getting enough investment, your funders. So you really need to find a community of champions for yourself. You really need to find people who will put that buck on you and bet that buck on you. People who would support you through difficult times. People who will, stay at home for your kids if you want to have them. because you have to go for a meeting, and will who will tell you, especially if you're a mother, that guilt is part of mothering and the journey, and it's okay, you can't be perfect at all. So you really need to find that community. Okay,
Yeah,
that's true, that whether it is through a fellowship, whether it's through a program, whether it's through intentionally finding these circles, you really need to widen. So life
mm,
and passion will go evolve. You need to find your community. And the third thing is, like, you will find people who will support you in your journey, which means you have to become the person who supports other women in the journey. You have to
yeah,
show up for them as well. You have to be champions for other women. And which means, as as we go ahead in this journey, we will get mentored and coached by women. We will have champions and other women who will see you as a potential for great work. We also have that responsibility to pass it on to other women. We
yeah,
need to find young women, we need to support them within the organizations, invest in their learning, invest in
yeah,
their making mistakes,
yeah,
be okay and stand by them while they make mistakes, and support them in new initiatives,
yeah,
knowing very well that you may find 10 men who would be able to travel to hinterlands, but you must invest in those women who come in and will have difficult journeys and say, no, we support you, but this is the work, this is what it is.
yeah,
So that's the third message, that find champions to champion you, but become champions for others as
yeah.
well. That's a
Absolutely.
responsibility that we should hold.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's great. So this is something more like a message to the budding entrepreneurs and the aspiring women entrepreneurs. Any program that you joined or any event that you went and it just, kind of bring that shift in your mindset that you would like to share, any program or any community or the groups you have joined in the late years or in recently?
Uh, I think I've been part of many fellowships actually. So
Yes.
I'm maybe 12 years ago, I was part of the Asia Pacific Leadership Program. And that was a very defining moment because I was with, leaders across Asia Pacific, defining, and in fact, voice was birthed out of that. I'd worked for a decade, so that leadership space was really great for me to reflect on what next and create an
Yeah.
action plan. So the Asia Pacific Leadership Program was very important for that. And similarly, I mean, over the years, I've been part of, say, the Opportunity Collaboration Fellowship, again, a great space for young people to go and find philanthropists and implementation and public policy people, everybody in one room to think about how to solve world problems. Or recently, the Echidna Global Scholarship, where, I was part of this forum working fellowship that brings together great gender advocates who from global south who worked on gender in and through education. But
Yeah.
I would say, let's not limit to this, right? Like, there are so many opportunities. There's Acumen Fellowship, there's Vital Voices for Women. Just a few that I can remember, but there are so many, opportunities nowadays for, women to go, or even young people to access, who
Yeah.
want to be part of social impact space. I think every network will widen, every such opportunity will widen your networks, will widen your scope of work, and is a great space to pause and reflect. Because most of these programs are designed for, have a leadership component, and the design of it itself would be that you will be able to reflect on your journey and pause to plan what is ahead,
Yeah.
especially for women entrepreneurs or even social entrepreneurs. It's
Yeah.
irrespective of gender. There's a lot of, like, going through the day and fighting one problem and putting out a fire somewhere else.
Yeah.
These these journeys will, these fellowships or these spaces will help you pause. And I think pause is as important for success as, running with it. So
Running
there's
with
a
it.
lot of opportunities. Find those spaces. There are scholarships, or you just invest in your own learning in these spaces. They
Yes.
go a long way in giving you community, giving you champions, giving you investors, widening your networks, and also help, us personally to develop our own leadership
Yeah.
journeys.
No, thank you so much. I think these are all great pointers for all of the viewers who will be listening to the podcast, and they really want to do something for the girls and then for the society and be the part of social impact space. So thank you for sharing all these great pointers. We come to the last segment of our podcast now. I think it was a great. I didn't realize it's already 2:40 and we've started at 1:40. I'm sorry about that 15-minute delay in the beginning.
Not at all.
But I learned a lot about you and the overall the process that you were part of. Now, just let's do some fun stuff at the end. Just talk about just a fun stuff because we all want the creative and fun stuff, and it's just part of good podcast. So I'll probably ask you very quick, rapid. I won't call it a rapid fire. I think it's a very cliched word at the end of interviews. I would like to just know you a little bit more. I'd like to just know
Uh-huh.
Anusha a bit more. So I'll ask you one question, and without thinking, you just let us know in terms of what you
Mm.
like and what you don't like. So here we go. Brace yourself. All
Ready,
right.
ready, fire away.
Awesome. What's your favorite food?
I love very good dal chawal sabji made the Telugu style. That's my comfort food.
Awesome.
Absolutely go to every time.
Okay. So home cooked or any restaurant as well will do.
Home cooked restaurant, but basically Andhra Telangana food, because that's where I'm from, Hyderabad. Absolutely love it. Any day you take me for a thali meals,
Yeah.
which has all of this, that's my go-to. It's a joke within my organization now. Anusha को कहीं जाना है तो कहाँ लेके जाएगी? Meals खिलाने लेके जाएगी. So that's my find the best meal places in the
Nice.
country is my hobby. Like literally, like I take down notes and share.
So you're currently stationed in Bangalore, but you're originally
Yes,
from Hyderabad. Okay. I
Hyderabad.
actually
Yes,
lived in Hyderabad too. I worked there for a couple of years and I started learning Telugu, but the only thing I learned was Telugu Radu. That's all I knew.
Telugu.
And I still remember that, so I definitely learned that. Because see, my maid, they say they were speaking Telugu, and I'm like Telugu Radu, Battala
Yeah.
and Battala and all that, Bartan Manjnika and all. I used to speak with the maid with all actions. So they taught me Telugu a little bit. So jokes apart. Okay, your favorite vacation spot?
Thailand. Thailand is my
Nice.
favorite vacation spot. I love the beach. I love
Yes.
it to be clean. I don't like too many people. So there are spots in Thailand where you don't. And my children love the water. We're all water. We're a very water family.
Water
So
for
Thailand is my favorite. In India, it
awesome.
would be Goa. Very cliche. But otherwise it's Thailand. And it's the offbeat. It's not the very, yeah, I
Nice.
love.
What book you're reading right now?
I'm reading actually two books. There's this Bear Town series by Frederick Backman. I'm on the third book now, The Winners. It's absolutely great. The characterizations. I like him as an author as well. So that's one book I'm reading, Winners. And I'm reading this book called The Authenticity Project. I think it's a great idea. I don't want to give you spoilers if you like reading, but that's a book that has given me ideas. I'm still waiting to see how it shapes up, but I think it's a great idea.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm reading that.
Awesome. And then who do you idolize, like in terms of life or fashion or in any space? Like who do you idolize? Who's your idol? Female, male, whoever.
At home, it's my grandmother. I think I have a very cool grandmother. She's 95. She reads the Kindle. She knows the iPad. She do WhatsApp calls with her grandchildren. Share stories. I mean, she's reading this really great book on her Kindle, and every day she's telling me stories. So I think she's the coolest grandmother I could ask for. She's also lived
But
a
if you
lot
have to step
abroad.
out of your home boundary, who would it be?
Outside the home boundary, there are many. I think if it's about, just a female, activist, I think Maya Angelou is a great inspiration for me. As a social activist, I've been very fortunate to work with Aruna Roy, who's behind the Right to Information movement, and really like, being very close quarters working with her. So she's a big inspiration for me.
Nice.
Many like that, but I would say these two for now.
Great, awesome. So we come to the last question. What is your favorite part of the day?
What is my favorite part of the day? Favorite part of the day is actually putting my kids to sleep in the night because they're
Yes.
also in a very chatty mood, and we do this whole what is a good
They
thing
have
that
the
happened in the day.
maximum energy at the bedtime, and I don't understand how that
Exactly.
happens.
And so why we do this, the four of us, me, my husband, and my kids, like we have to share one good thing that happened in the day and one bad thing. And my
Yeah.
daughter is the boss, so she's the first one that has to go, and she's the one who will comment on everybody. And she's.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
really
what the
to
boys
find
think.
our voice. when this 4-year-old is constantly sort of also saying, yo, that is not a bad thing, that's actually a good thing. Or yeah,
Yeah,
so that's the my favorite part of the day.
fantastic. It
To be
sounds like
getting those snippets of,
yes,
yeah, that's my
that sounds
favorite part of the day.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Anusha, from the bottom of my heart. It was a wonderful 1 hour I spent with you exactly at 2:42. I mean, I did not plan it; it just happened. Like I said, the universe is helping me curate these experiences
Absolutely.
to bring something forward.
Absolutely.
I believe in that
More
good
power to you,
intent.
Anjali. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
this is just the beginning. More power to you. I completely enjoy. Like I said,
Yes.
you also mentioned the 1 hour just, dissipated so quickly. And it was great to hear a little bit of your conversations and your story as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. So, thank you so much. This was Anusha Bharadwaj today, and I think I learned a lot from her journey in terms of how she has given so many years of her life to coach, to work with adolescent girls and boys as well, and almost 2 lakhs lives have been impacted, and more than 5,000 boys. There's a good stat in terms of what she is delivering towards society. So kudos to her work, kudos and more power to her attitude in life, and strive to do better, and especially from gender equality perspective. So it's a great fem story for us to bring to this platform. I'm personally very passionate and very uh, excited for Anusha Bharadwaj episode because she was the first, entrepreneur. She was the first female I called in when I was about to start my podcast. But for some logistics issue, we could not get online. And here we are on the Zoom podcast talking about, her journey, about her fem story. So this was Anusha's fem story. Please write to us. Please share your feedback in terms of how you liked Anusha's journey and her fem story. Until then, keep watching Fem Story. Thank you.